the next vanilla ice who says, well, I asked Chat GPT to give me a baseline and then I used that. It's not my fault. Um, it sounds like they better not be looking to indemnify him because they're going to have even though the US has more lawyers than the rest of the world combined, OpenAI would probably need every lawyer in the country and then some to defend against that.
I think you're right, Don. Certainly whatever exposure they've taken on here, they've worked hard and are working hard because there are no details yet. Working hard to narrow it. If the lawsuit happens because you were using their LLM and their LLM in turn was built on part of its corpus came from someone alleging copyright infringement, I think that would be the sort of the limit that they would. On the other hand, if you're out there deliberately trying to, this is going to be an interesting thing, right? Because you're never copying verbatim in the context of OpenAI or Bing or any of the others. It's synthesizing material on the fly based on patterns that exist, are latent in the corpus. So you're never really copying anything as such. But it would be an interesting question whether, if I set about deliberately to imitate some famous and perhaps very wealthy and lucrative artist, and deliberately took on their style and their approach, what's my exposure there? Because copyright, the concern is one thing substantially similar to another thing, whatever substantially similar means. And even if I'm not pulling from copyrighted resources, if I'm creating something that looks like somebody else's product, there's pretty standard copyright exposure there. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that coming from OpenAI, it feels like a big affirmation, especially due that it is still a pretty uncertain scenario. Elio, what do you think? What are your thoughts on that, coming from a more technical perspective?
Well, this is a tough question. I don't think that any case has yet gone up to the Supreme Court, so we don't have a final decision on that. And funny, Elon Musk was on that New York Times event deal something last week that reunited lots of CEOs, and he gave that message to Disney CEO about that whole thing, and he said, "Listen, when." In about 2-3 years, when these cases go all the way up to the Supreme Court and everything, it won't matter anymore because AI will have reached artificial general intelligence and will be another sphere. So I think there's a lot of uncertainty of if we can at all control the use of this corpus of this data, because AI is connected to the web and it's just going to go there and grab things and use it. So I think it's uncertain. We need to wait and see how this is going to proceed.
Rob, to his point, are we going to see Justice GPT on the Supreme Court? Why do we have? Is there something in the Constitution that says it has to be a human? Right.
Good question.
Well, in the United States, there's something in your state laws and in the Bar Association, which is essentially a sanctioned monopoly on the practice of law in the state. Yeah, there has to be a human, unequivocally. Now, the human's role may end up being reduced to very nearly nothing in a lot of cases. But if you're getting legal representation of any kind in the United States, it means almost by definition there's a human involved, if nothing else than to shuttle messages from GPT-4 back to you.
There you go.
But there's more to it, obviously. And this is really an interesting issue, a larger philosophical issue, and it goes for not just law, but any kind of engagement where what you're relying on is a human being's judgment, sort of their skill and experience, as opposed to their knowledge base or ability to synthesize words, which or images or what have you. If you're relying on essentially human characteristics that so far haven't been mimicked by the machine and never could be in principle, I think. The exercise of judgment that brings in different notions other than neural nets. I think anyway, that's its own philosophical tributary, which is intriguing, but we're not going to go there today.
Yeah, that's such a big discussion. I feel like we could spend hours and hours and still have lots to talk about it. So let me ask you, Don, something. Moving on to the more financial approach, what would you say are the difference between investing in any tech company and investing in an AI-based company?
I mean, it's a great question. We again, those of us that were very active in the dot-com days maybe refer back a little too much. I don't know, but I see such huge parallels where at a certain point there was a distinction between, and that's why you could refer to the dot-coms. Because there was everything from pets.com to whatever. It was considered to be a unique, special, and different model, an industry of its own. To most of the extent, it did not, which is why pets.com and others failed. But what happened is that every business at this, I mean, is there a business today that doesn't have some internet aspect to it, right? I mean, can't think of any company, any service, any business that doesn't have a website or email or Zoom. There's something that it does that, aside from maybe a lemonade stand, kids on your street, even they probably right now are promoting it on social media, right? So, to that extent, I believe that we had a little bit of again, everything's just faster with AI, where there was a dot-com bubble for 2 or 3 years and then it burst, and then everybody adapted the internet to their business model, and new models emerged. With AI, that it's just 10 times faster. So I don't believe that, aside from some very unique, but the majority of AI is eating the world, that most companies, most businesses are going to have to integrate it or die. In that sense, I guess if you invested in specifically AI that was going to provide food services or something, that you may get acquired by a food service company, but ultimately in a year or 2 or 3, whatever industry, whatever service, the existing companies or other companies will integrate AI into what they do. And I think we were talking earlier about Siri, right? So even OpenAI, right? Any of the AI, if Apple decided that they wanted to, compete and make Siri that competitor, or Amazon with Alexa that is, or listening to me now, so I can't even say her name, right? So would I invest in OpenAI or invest in Google, right? That just announced Gemini. Yeah, it's it's tough. It's rapidly changing.
Yeah, it's definitely been a whole year that with rapid changes that it's hard, it's a struggle to keep updated with everything that is happening on the industry and to make decisions. So Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as Don mentioned, it's a really interesting thing, because what AI, like so many other tools that we've been through, but this one may be the biggest to date, bigger than, well, of equal immensity as the internet itself, of equal significance here, because as Don mentioned, whether you approach it as part of your product or as a tool that you use in producing your product or your service, the word is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And so if you're using it as a tool in your business, at least the legal concerns are similar to other tools. And I think Don's argument was it's also similar in many regards to the way that businesses adapted to the internet in 1999, 2000, 2004, 5, 6, 10. It became part of their business model, part of their array of capabilities, and that meant a lot of different things. For conventional businesses, your accountant, it didn't really revolutionize accounting and make accounting into something altogether different. It said that you could upload your QuickBooks file to your accountant, have them inspect it, and do your taxes. Well, that's very efficient, but accounting didn't substantially change, or maybe it's arguably it did. However, the taxi business changed radically, extraordinarily radically, with new entrants who didn't even own taxis now in the taxi business, Uber and Lyft and the like. So you're going to see the same sort of phenomena happening in the case of the rise of AI. It might be used as a tool in your business, or it might be used as part of the business itself, as part of the product or the service that you're providing. And each one has its own legal implications. But as Don was suggesting, just as when the internet came along and changed businesses, an investor there would have to assess the business based on certain fundamentals. How does it make money, and how can it continue to make money, and how does it compete, and so on and so forth. Those same principles are at play with AI and AI products and AI services. It's just inherently unpredictable because it's moving so fast, and it's such a Promethean capability that changes so much about the game, commercially and artistically and culturally. As Elio said earlier, it's hard to predict how this all shakes out. But in general, for a startup involved in this space today, the concerns are not fundamentally, the legal concerns are not fundamentally different from, say, any other cloud service you've been using. There are inherent privacy and confidentiality and security concerns there, and they differ from industry to industry, but anyone using Google Docs has a legal cloud issue on their hands. You've got to administer it, you've got to make it secure, and there are questions concerning your liability if Google should ever be hacked. Those same questions exist with OpenAI. They're not different in kind from that.
Yeah, Rob, if I may comment on what you just said. VCs usually have due diligence process, right? And I think that before, this due diligence process was more clear than it is today. just because we don't know all the risks involved. Because, like Don said, just wait 5 minutes and things will change. Not only for new risks that are going to appear and we don't know about them today, and also the marketplace is also a little bit confusing. For example, we have seen a myriad of new products that are coming up based on some model from OpenAI, for example. And these companies are getting a lot of investment, but they may not exist in 6 months or a year from now, because one of these big techs are going to incorporate their functionality into the main platform. And so quickly that they will, I'm just hypothetical, they can look at a product that are doing well in the marketplace and say, hey, ChatGPT, give me the code that runs similar to this product, and then we'll incorporate in our own store. So, these uncertainty about what risks am I going to be faced with, and the marketplace, how is it going to change? I think it's going to change in a so much faster pace that this is going to bring uncertainty, and perhaps interest rates will go up, and then this is how will the investment how will that translate into how much equity will the investor want to have to put some amount of money in that endeavor.
Agreed.
So going on what Elio was talking about, Don, what would you say are the cautionary tales for investing in AI?
Yeah. So again, when you're investing in new and emerging things, especially that again are evolving so quickly, it's very difficult. So that's again going back to the people that invested in all these different .coms. Some people probably don't know, Mark Cuban came up with this idea that people were going to listen to radio over their dial-up internet connection. And this never happened, but Yahoo bought it and he got a lot of Yahoo stock and he sold the stock and that's where he made his money. So meanwhile, Yahoo gave him a lot of stock for something that, never panned out. It was a decade or more before Spotify and other services came along that because we have the bandwidth now and again his concept was people would be listening to radio stations, not what we have today, streaming. Was not his concept. So I would say as a cautionary tale, when if you live in an area that is very stable, then you probably don't build your structures with an eye towards earthquakes the way they do in the Bay Area, for example, right? Well, recognizing that maybe we did have an investment environment that was more stable, but now we live in an earthquake world. Plan for it. So my suggestion would be to make more than anything, diversification was always a good strategy, and now even more so. If you have to question, and at this point I would question all of my assumptions. That's be careful what you assume, right? Do you assume that again, people assumed that the financial system was going to be stable until 2008, when all of a sudden it wasn't, right? And a lot of people lost a lot of money and got badly hurt because they didn't question the assumption that this, there was stability. This is totally unstable. And if you, again, we, invest in OpenAI seems like a good investment, right? And yet, again, as we've discussed, if Apple went after them, all the people that carry their devices would immediately start using it, and probably as we know, Apple has a a very strong fan base. So, how many people would use them exclusively, just shut off any other sources? Again, same thing with Amazon, right? Rob, I'd be interested in your thoughts on the value of, they have a patent, which I just discovered, I was poking around a little bit, on anticipatory shipping, right? The idea that because they know us so well, now all we got to do is engage some AI and just start. My doorbell could ring any minute with a package from Amazon of stuff that they know that I need and want, and so on. Be like, oh, gee, yeah, great, fantastic, right? And as long as they're willing to take it back, if they know what you want, what you need, and when you want it and need it, and they send it to you, that's a service, right? I mean, they're adding value to your life. You didn't even have to spend the time and energy, and if they're willing to take it back, then they haven't harmed you. It's a little scary, right, from a privacy and other standpoint. Like, okay, but again, they patented this anticipatory shipping. I really cannot imagine that AI is not going to be taking over a lot of the buying decisions for everything, including enterprise purchases sooner rather than later. There will be a human component. And again, Rob and I were joking about your AI will talk to my AI, and that's probably coming down the road. So will it be Amazon just sending me stuff, or will it be Amazon's system talking to my chosen agent, Siri or whomever, to say, I think Don is hungry, let me send him a burger? Say, yeah, he's hungry, but he doesn't want a burger today, so and then the food just arrives. Who's going to be controlling all of that interaction, and who owns the data, and can Amazon enforce their patent when everyone and everything has AI built in? Anticipatory shipping may just be like trying to patent having a website. Oh no, sorry, or a telephone. So don't know.
Don, that's really fascinating. And it struck me as you were describing that there's as much here. I mean, the legal issues are not that significant, to be honest with you, even though Amazon wants to be a pusher, right? But it's legal stuff they're pushing here. The really interesting thing to my mind is you had mentioned at the end my agent versus Amazon's agent. The question here is, what power relationships are being set up among the players, the consumers on one hand, and the big players on the other? Is Amazon the one who is housing, so to speak, my agent? Are my preferences living entirely inside Amazon? And is Amazon tracking the use of toilet paper in my house, and the use of shaving cream, and the use of whatever? Or is that something that I have control over? It struck me that in the credit industry, we had at one point an opportunity here to control our own credit information, to control directly when it was being disclosed to whom, and the like. But that's been taken over by the big three: Equifax, TransUnion, and the third one. So the question here, as we talk about AI agents, is it my agent, or is an agent that's housed inside of Amazon, inside of Microsoft, inside of the U.S. government? Is it my autonomous agent? Is it under my control, or am I beholden to some third party for even expressing my preferences? Anyway, just a thought.
And we're being kind of US centric, certainly, right? Because I was going to say, well, hopefully the government won't be saying, you can't, right? What happens when Meta and Amazon and Apple and so on all go to the government and say, well, we don't want Rob to have the right to have his own agent. We want to force him to use us. Then because Meta knows probably, you know, the status of your shaving cream and so on, right? Just so aside from Amazon and whatnot, they're so intrusive. But again, outside of the US, right, where, you know, yeah, I mean, there are countries today, right, that have the whole social credit system and whatnot. So are they going to even allow people to have their own agent? Don't know. Again, so tying it back to investment, I would say, you know, more than ever, diversify. You know, if I'd be looking at, again, as we scale up, you know, there's going to, you know, people are needing more and more chips, right, to power the AI and so on. But again, right, don't get too, oh, okay, I'll just buy, you know, current chip technology because it's very clear that AI is not going away. They're good. Yeah, but tomorrow somebody's going to go with a better chip or one that, you know, works on oxygen instead of electricity and so on. And right, all the money you put into NVIDIA all of a sudden. So I would say don't make too many big bets. I would diversify as much and you know, put your money in you know, gold and wheat and chips and AI and shoelaces, right? So whatever takes off, you'll be covered.
Yeah, I believe it can turn out to be a big fight for the big techs to decide on who is going to control the agents and have the power over it. So I can see here in the chat that Roger has a question. If you can, I believe you can unmute and ask, or you can also put here in the chat.
I see Roger's question. It's about the regulations and regulators' perspective on this. But Roger, what about it? Say more.
I mean, I think we can assume just based on our, you know, on past history that, you know,
Yeah,
regulators.
I'm back.
Yeah,
I'm back online. So sorry for that. Don't ask me to close, then I kind of miss everything. So the question is about, remember a few years ago, I think Apple, Facebook, I don't know if Twitter was part of it. They wanted to create some kind of currency, but I think the Congress stepped in and they said, no way, you cannot create that thing, and it's gone for now, so we don't have it. So my questions is also connected to, I also remember a few months ago, or just a few weeks ago, there was a conference in the West Coast where this major player, I think it was Microsoft, they had a conference and more than 2,000 startups closed because of what Don was saying. That, okay, if the major player steps in, if you have a small business, you can just close because they can take a functionality. Now, the AI thing, I don't see it going away, but for sure. I think you guys say that. I don't see it going away. But it's also scary, like you said, you can be sitting home, someone send a package, oh, Roger, you have to pay me $100 because you need to buy maybe 100 pancakes for your, etc. It can be chaotic. So, Robert, you are a lawyer. How do you I don't want to say track and monitor the implications of regulators? Because US, don't you said it, but most of the time all these things start in US and then the rest of the world follow. So how are the US regulators looking on this AI matter, and how do you see them? Because as a lawyer, you certainly have some knowledge on what's going on that underneath. That's my concern.
So, I mean, I guess I can say so far what I know is the White House, Joe Biden's White House, became very, very interested in this issue, and of course, the royalty of the AI world showed up on Capitol Hill as well to testify. actually seeking, actively seeking, especially in the case of Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, actively seeking government involvement and ultimately regulation. So far, all that's been done, all that's fallen out of that in the United States is a set of high-level policy recommendations and objectives from a commission set up to propose or to look at the role of government in this. And the issues go to larger, or rather the initiatives go to sort of large themes in AI, focus on things like transparency. So in other words, one of the inherent problems or issues or limitations, or maybe one of the amazing things about AI and the AI systems we're all using today is their explainability is not always a capability that they have. How did you come to the conclusion that you came to? How did you synthesize the molecule that you synthesized? How did you write the article that you wrote? Very often these systems can't explain themselves. You can't go back in history and find out how it ended up at that result. Having to do with the inherent sort of indeterminacy of the system itself. These are probabilistic models, and the models can be weighted, and tracing a history back of millions of coupled probabilities, right? What's going on in a neural net is these layer after layer after layer of neurons evaluating a given data set for patterns. How did it arrive at the patterns? How did it generate the patterns? Well, very often that's not easily done. And the reason that this is important is I might be denied credit someday because an AI decided I'm not worthy of credit. Or I might not be a candidate for some health procedure because an AI decided I didn't fit the profile. And can it explain itself? Well, we don't know. In some cases, the answer is yes. In some cases, the answer is no. The tractability of the reasoning done by the AI isn't always present. And that's just one example of kind of the larger policy issues here. The other goes to intellectual property issues, you know, requiring, there's a proposition on the table, requiring all authors of anything to declare whether they used an AI in synthesizing their answer. Obviously, you know, we saw back in the 2016 election the influence of social media groups on elections. One of the concerns here is for democratic ideals as well, that we be able to determine what news is real and what news is fake. And even today, you can ask AIs for citations to sources, but what's to stop the AI from synthesizing their own sources in time? So the question is, what, you know, where's the bottom, the floor, the ground of truth on the internet, especially when we have AIs out there generating all kinds of novel content. So these are the sorts of big policy issues. And it goes on, these sorts of concerns, and it's fascinating conversational material, but so far none of it is law. None of it is law. There are no laws in the United States or anywhere else in the world, and I know the EU is looking into these similar things as well, but there are no laws as such aimed specifically at AI yet. It'll come in time. And my guess is it'll break down by sector more and more. The financial services sector is going to be clobbered by AI. It will be, I think, radically transformed. And these themes will come up in the context of financial services, of medicine, of, you know, and certainly of law. Anyway, I hope that addresses your question, Roger.
Well, and Roger made a great point about I think it was Meta that was I don't think they ever overtly said, but it was an open secret that they were looking to have their own coin, right? When during the crypto bubble, right? When everybody was jumping in, um, and I suspect the heavy hand of Washington came down, because if they had foreseen Bitcoin, they probably would have made it illegal before it got. But again, like most of these things, like your point, Uber and Lyft, right? The taxi and limousine commissions thought they had everything locked down and didn't realize this was a threat until it was too late and they couldn't shut it down. They tried, right? In various cities, they tried to shut them down. The public outcry because we had tasted it and it was good, so we didn't want them taking it away anymore. Same thing with Bitcoin. They probably would have shut it down if they realized that it was a threat to government. Look, talk about investment. If you came to me in a vacuum and said, I'd like you to invest in this coin, where the people in charge of the coin are printing trillions and trillions of dollars, virtual, unfounded, untethered to anything. We are printing trillions of dollars every year. And there are histories of plenty of countries, unfortunately, right? Venezuela was, the most recent, I believe, or Zimbabwe. I don't know who has that dubious distinction of hitting, like 100% inflation per month, right, recently, and having their currency become so meaningless that it wasn't, by the time you printed the paper, it wasn't worth the paper it was printed on anymore. So I think when again, even in the US, when they saw that Bitcoin and other currency were achieving traction, that if what would you invest in? A coin that was guaranteed by, let's say, even God help us, a consortium. What if Google, Facebook, Microsoft, the FANGs, right, all got together and said, we are going to jump on Bitcoin or the FANG coin, backed by these multi-trillion-dollar companies, and we can, because we have this mining or what have you, proof of stake, proof of et cetera, right? It's tethered to something. Do you want the FANG coin, or do you want dollars that, again, both parties in the last decade or so just ran the printing press? You want more dollars? Sure, here's another trillion. At a certain point, and we're seeing the effects with inflation. So do you want a FANG dollar or do you want a US dollar? They don't want you asking that question. I hope I don't sound like a conspiracy theorist, but the Fed does not want that competition.
Yeah.
All this uncertainty that we're talking about, I think it's really it's not a certain playing field. The context is so full of unknown. So from a technological point of view, where we make a living building AI applications for companies, is that there is a difference between, I'll call it traditional AI, where explainability, scalability, quality of data, and all these other elements are very important for you to assess risk. But now we have a set of risks that will appear, or risks that we know what they are, but we don't know the extent. Because if we go back to risk management 101, what do you have to do? You have to identify your risk. You have to assess it. What's the likelihood? Is it a low, medium, or high impact risk? We don't know. So how can I manage the risks that I don't know a lot about? How am I going to mitigate? Am I going to get insurance? Like OpenAI saying, oh, look, I will insure you against this exposure here. Are we going to avoid, reduce? So I think from a technical point of view, and then thinking about the relationships between the startup and the investors, the best way to do now is to communicate to your investors the risks that you have identified, and to tell them, listen, there is some things that nobody knows. Do you want to come on this, join the bandwagon on this great idea that I had? We can make a lot of money. Maybe we won't, but communication, being transparent about what you don't know, more than what you think you know.
On that note, Elio, I guess I would certainly, a shameless plug here. I would encourage people to talk to you, about their current business and how to, because again, as we pointed out, whatever you want, like the when people 20 some years ago said, do I need a website? Do I need to use email? I think we know the answer to that question. AI is very, very clearly going to be a part of your industry, whatever it is. I don't care what industry it is, AI is going to have an effect. So you can sit back and watch other people, take over, or you can be proactive about it. So I would certainly encourage people to reach out to you, to say, what can I start looking at building? Where should I be looking at integrating this into my current business? Because you snooze, you lose. This is not, again, not a situation where you can afford to put your head in the sand. That's not going to work.
Yes, Don, good that you mentioned that. We do have some clients that come to us saying, listen, I need to use AI or I'll get behind, but I don't know exactly how to. So we and lots of other people are building frameworks where you can, with levels of maturity as you delve into AI and start using it. And I will say from experience, there are so many areas with AI applications that the risks are very, very low. For example, computer vision. You get a camera, and then the algorithm will read the images from the camera and tell you this part is not good. Oh, I counted 102 parts, and so there are so many applications there with reduced risks because they are domain specific. I'm going to teach my algorithm to understand what this camera is looking at. So, and this can bring so much value to your business just by using this less risky, more known, more tested AI applications. There are many, many, many.
Unless you're diagnosing cancer. Unless you're diagnosing cancer, then the risks are pretty high in the case of, video recognition or image recognition, right?
Yeah, well, the risk to your health, yes. The risk to the assertiveness and truth of the AI, no. The AI really was. And there was a breakthrough just a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I think it was in London. This model was able to recognize and identify some sub-molecule, sub-particle thing in the pancreatic cancer that is supposed to save tens of thousands of lives just because the diagnostic can be made so much earlier. So that's a great case of computer vision and analysis, right? But then this model was trained on the pancreas. All I know is pancreas. I don't know about anything else. So this is a kind of a secure realm where I can apply AI and be pretty certain about my. And then you can also say, listen, this model that knows about the pancreas is only 93.6% assertive. So there is a 6.4% chance of error. So, when you explain this to your customer, Rob, as a lawyer, this kind of helps ease your burden, your responsibility, because you're already told what the risks are involved.
That's a great point. So Rob, I think it's coming in sooner rather than later. What happens when people take selfies and their phone says, I don't like that mole or that spot, whatever, you should get it checked out, right? And so, again, skin cancer, for example, right, I think is something that, I mean, and there's probably going to be apps where you just scan yourself and again, so hopefully, and if there are people that are going to get a false positive, right? And they're going to get scared and they're going to sue Apple or Google or whomever, say, you flagged this and said, go get this checked out. And it was nothing. And it cost me time and money. And I didn't sleep, until I was able to, you scared me for nothing. And they'll probably want to sue. But again, the lives that would be saved by, right, everybody taking these selfies, I'm sure there are, physical conditions that can be diagnosed today by the right model. Hopefully, they won't get squashed by that kind of lawsuit.
Don, let me use your comments here as a way of deftly swerving in and answering Eduardo's question that he asked a few minutes ago. He was wondering, in the context of that earlier discussion concerning GPT or chat OpenAI's indemnity for copyright infringement, the so-called copyright shield. He asked, what about incorrect or inappropriate responses and who holds legal responsibility? So I wanted to get back to that and answer Eduardo and come to your question. I think going back to what you just stated, Don, the really problematic issue is not false positives. Okay, I wasted time going to the doctor. It's false negatives. You guys knew or should have known, and I was relying on you to tell me that this little patch on my skin was cancerous. And you never did it, and I took lots of selfies and close-ups, and now I got problems. And it's all because of you, right? And so, Eduardo, in OpenAI's terms of service, even for certainly for your free use, for the plus the $20 a month use, and for the API and enterprise use, they go to great lengths to call out the fact that these systems are not warranted for the quality of their responses, and it's incumbent on the user to inspect the responses coming out and examine them and question them. So yes, AIs hallucinate, and from time to time you might want to check and see. The very famous one that's already come up, and it came up 6 months ago or so, and you've probably already heard of it, had to do with a lawyer who was using Chat API to do his legal memoranda and briefs, and Chat API came up with a proposition, cited a court case, the name of the parties, Smith versus Jones, and then cited the specific document, 360 SCT 475 1986, whatever. He gave a citation. The lawyer said, looks good, supports my case. I'm going to put this in my brief, and off to the races. Well, somebody looked at the citation, found out there is no such case. It looked really good. It looked like it was a valid result. There is no such case. And the lawyer was disciplined, appropriately so, for that. But again, here, I don't view this as different in kind from the use of any other tool, and the requirements, your requirements as a lawyer, as a physician, as an end user, to do your own due diligence here, having been suitably warned that we may produce errors from time to time. Check us out. I think that the legal issues, by and large, go away if you appropriately disclaim your product. Otherwise, there are implicit warranties. We call them warranties in law, that whatever I'm providing you is suitable for its fitness to purpose. So in other words, it will do what you want it to do, or that it's merchantable, meaning you can rely on it, that it will perform up to specifications, things like that. All bets are off with AI still. How these lines are going to be drawn eventually, it's going to be a tough slog and a case by case. And you know, I do a very simple kind of law, but if I were involved and wanted to be a lawyer full time, I would chase. This would be a great area to build it, because it's precisely these gray areas that the law churns its way through for years and years and years. It may not ever keep up with the technology at this rate, but unsettled questions, Eduardo. But do take a look. And for a startup, I would say you now have to look very carefully whether you're using this thing as a tool or as part of your product. Look very carefully at the terms and conditions of your license, because that's going to govern it until the government figures things out. It's going to be what's in the contract, what's not in the contract, that will determine, you know, whether you can sue or whether you can be sued for legal reasons. So enough of that.
So everyone, I think our hour has gone off. I don't know if anyone has any more questions. I believe that we could stay here and answer if you have.
Well, I guess if, you know, but before I was, you know, but, you know, Rob, I think, you know, we can certainly take this offline, could be a fun debate, but you would think, and I've become cynical in my old age, because there was a product that for about 50 years basically had in bold letters on the package, don't use this, it's dangerous. And after 50 years of government mandated warnings, you know, many lawsuits got thrown out, but eventually the combination of government and the legal industry ganged up on the tobacco industry that was so unpopular that they said, I don't care that you've done everything that we've told you to do. I never owned a tobacco company on it, but it scares me as a business person to think, well, if you get to be unpopular enough, then they will just come down no matter how you put disclaimers out there. So it'll be very interesting to watch and see, if OpenAI becomes really unpopular, who knows, maybe there'll be a class action. I don't know.
Yes, we can predict what the future holds in this industry. So thank you, everyone. I believe this will be it for today. Thank you to our panelists. I believe it was a very insightful discussion for everyone. And thank you for everyone who joined here.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thanks for hosting, Vic. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank
Take care. Bye-bye.